are the Anunnaki? What is up, alienARMy? I am Oculus, the alien next door, purveyor of esoteric lore. And on this channel, we discuss everything out of this world. So today's topic, this one is really impromptu because I was just guided to film it today, which is actually the same day that I channeled it. So
here we fucking are.
I was meandering along on Twitter and I actually just had sort of like a light bulb moment, and then I tweeted, "We live inside a giant Anunnaki psychological experiment or not?" So that was the phrase that I tweeted out, and it was like boom, instantaneous. Now this Anunnaki high priest was waving at me energetically like, "Hey, what's up?"
So homie, how you doing today?
And so basically I started channeling shit. So this is coming from an Anunnaki high priest. This is how this entity conveyed themselves to me, and we're gonna go on a whole little long journey here. It's gonna be winding up some roads, it's gonna be going through some tunnels, it's gonna be traipsing through some mountains and things like that. So we are going to cover a few topics here. Buckle up, here we go. This Anunnaki high priest conveyed this message to me saying, "The brethren of the discernment." So this channeled message was conveyed to me as soon as I wrote that tweet that I mentioned. And from what I saw, that this basically is a giant psychological experiment in regards to mind control and energetic control and things like that. So if we want to think of the stereotypical The Matrix, everyone is familiar with that movie, I'm sure, then you could think of it somewhat like that. So this being this Anunnaki high priest telling me about the brethren of the discernment is somewhere in regards to the discernment betwixt the humanoids and each other, also betwixt the humanoids and the Anunnaki, betwixt the Anunnaki and themselves. Okay, it's somewhere along those lines, but this is just a general idea of what I got that was being conveyed to me. So one of those might apply to you more abundantly than another one, so just always take what fucking resonates. Remember, these are messages that are being conveyed to me. This is my truth, this is what I know. There you go.
But that's what I always do here.
So the brethren of the discernment was basically in regards to the whole 3D Earth Matrix. And watching the movie Matrix, you can see how basically Neo at one point is witness to the sleepers. Everyone in the Earth Matrix or whatever Matrix, they're asleep, but they are playing out some sort of life through their perception of consciousness. Okay, something to that effect. So this is a movie that I saw a really long time ago. I think I only saw it in its entirety once, but you know the story, all right? It's basically like that. So the discernment comes in is where, whilst inside the 3D matrix, you are going to notice other brethren who are like you, who see things through the eye, who see things through the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye. Whilst many others are asleep, just like Neo was witnessing, those motherfuckers asleep in the little pods in the matrix. So the brethren of the discernment is really conveyed in the sense that those who utilize their own discernment, they are linked, they are joined together in some way as brethren, because they see things through the third eye. They care not what they gaze upon necessarily with their physical 2, 3D eyes. These are essentially the ones who have woken up from being asleep inside of the matrix, and it can happen early along in their journey, it could happen later along in their journey. It depends on the individual, but like-minded individuals who see through the matrix, we can liken them to the term brethren, because they are seeing things differently. They are seeing things through the eye of discernment, much like the Anunnaki scripted it to, I suppose, because the Anunnaki, now this is what's being conveyed to me, is that they exist in the 11th dimension and higher, however you want to take that. Like, so they have this little 3D, remember we have 11 dimension and we are going all the way down to 3. So they're seeing a whole lot of things, and they're aware of different things that might not even be able to compute whilst someone is in a third dimensional vessel. But the way that it was shown to me, the eye of discernment somehow is linked inside the matrix to other like-minded individuals, as is linked to the Anunnaki higher mindset, 11th dimension and above. So the Anunnaki, I don't remember how many years ago exactly, was it 4,000, 5,000, somewhere, right? Somewhere around there. The Anunnaki were purported to be an alien race of beings or something of that sort, which were worshipped as gods by the ancient Assyrians, ancient Babylonians, ancient Sumerians, and ancient Akkadians. So these groups regarded roughly,
this ain't a history lesson, remember,
they regarded roughly the Anunnaki as being gods. So famous show, of course, that always talks about this theory is Ancient Aliens. So that's a little bit of the history of the Anunnaki. So they were purported to be an alien race that were worshipped as gods. Now, there are other theories going around about the Anunnaki, and this is more towards where I was guided to focus my attention in this video. I was like, okay, Anunnaki High Priest, let's buckle up. We ready for this shit. So this one, I'm sure you've heard as well, is that the Anunnaki are actually an alien race that came to Earth, and they mixed their own DNA with that of the monkeys that were on Earth. So if you want to talk about Darwin theory of evolution and all of that, I mean, that's a whole other topic, but what we're talking about here is the more out of the box theory in regards to human evolution. What I was being conveyed by this Anunnaki High Priest is that essentially, because they exist in the 11th dimension, they can look down into all of the other dimensions, they can reach higher dimensions. That's just, they're basically multi-dimensional motherfuckers, okay? Like they're just, they can get it if they want it. You know what I'm saying? In any dimension, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. So I don't know if there are any other matrices. I don't know if there are plural matrix going on as of this moment, aside from the 3D Earth matrix and the Mars matrix. So I did speak a little bit about the Mars matrix before, but this is kind of branching off from that because all of my videos, everything is always all connected. It's just that when I receive the info, I make a video about it then, and then I might receive another download, and then I see how this new download ties into previous videos that I have made. So I want to think of Anunnaki as great scientists, mathematicians, psychologists, doctors, however, and obviously it's way more advanced than that, but that's the closest thing that I can compare it to. They have all of that going on. They're very, very advanced energetically, and they like to conduct experiments. So the 3D matrix was basically Anunnaki DNA, Anunnaki bloodline, however that worked, Anunnaki energy, and it was blended with some of the inhabitants on Earth, which were purportedly monkeys, apes, chimps, whatever the fuck that was. So the Anunnaki, if we want to even go into Nazi Germany, how the scientists there, they were experimenting, trying to breed humans with a fucking donkey or whatever. I don't know what they were doing there, but I'm sure you've heard the fucking stories, okay? They were trying to crossbreed different species, okay? So that's basically the short version of the Anunnaki and what they were doing in the 3D matrix. Now the 3D matrix is actually a high-tech video game, which I speak about a lot in my other videos. And what they did is they wanted to have these multi-dimensional players. They wanted to see how, because they consider themselves to be highly, highly advanced beings, and they are, they wanted to see what would happen if they would be able to produce something that was somewhat in their image, but not necessarily exactly like them. So it was like a little science experiment, you could say. So they made this little structure, 3D matrix, and for whatever reason it's called Earth. I'm not going to get into the meaning behind all of this here. I'm just going with the info that was directly conveyed today.
Obviously, if I get more information, I'm gonna fucking share it.
So they were maintaining this 3D Earth matrix. If you want to think of like you're observing fish in a fish tank, that would be a very interesting way to look at it. If you want to look at it in terms of like lab rats and things like that, I would not even stretch it that far, because there are also interdimensional beings that reside in 4D, which are not associated with the Anunnaki, and so they're sort of getting in on the action and the fun on on the 3D plane. But from what is conveyed to me, the Anunnaki, they are way advanced, even more so than the 4D beings. So the Anunnaki, could they have created the third dimension, the fourth dimension, all of those? Sure. But right now, we are talking about the third dimensional plane. So I'm not saying that they are affiliated with the fourth dimensional beings, or if they aren't, it's just that was omitted from this channeling. So it's separate thing, all right? So just so we're on the same page, I'm not talking about fourth dimensional beings, demonic entities, things like that. I'm talking about from the Anunnaki point of view, as conveyed to me through this high priest. He is basically showing me that it's sort of like a fishbowl, a fish tank, and it was created for the purpose of conducting what could be likened to a science experiment, a bio experiment, human experiments. Okay, I do this all the time. I'm like,
I'm conducting a study.
Like, what the fuck?
And I'll just ask random questions and I'll see what type of answers I get and we'll jot it down in my little mental notepad, like, that's how the human mind works, right? Like, just to compare notes. So that's basically what they are doing, because they took some of their, I don't know if you would even call it DNA, but that's the closest word again, and they crossbred it with inhabitants of Earth. So with that being said, it's sort of like these interdimensional beings created this 3D matrix, and they had different types of prototypes going on there. Like you want to think of, like, you have the single cell paramecium, I think it's called. I don't know where that came from, but
Props to me that I remember that shit.
and you have reptiles, you have the fish that developed legs and then they were able to crawl, and you have the alligator, you have reptiles, you have zebras, goats, bears, chickens, pumas, all of that shit going on, ocelots on the fucking 3D plane. They are as well inventions, but they are not bred with the Anunnaki DNA, okay? They're just, I don't know what they are, right? This ain't about this is about the Anunnaki / human hybrid type of thing. That's why you hear that famous biblical story, right? God created man in his image. Okay, so who were the Anunnakis? If they created this whole fucking shit, then to an extent that would make them gods, right? But we all know that everyone is God in and of themselves because of the knowledge of the Anunnaki. That is how someone on a third dimensional material realm existence can elevate and access higher dimensions. It's because of the gift of the key that the Anunnaki gave to the humanoid. So it comes from them. The ability to see God, to be God on the third dimensional plane, it is coming from the Anunnaki.
Woo!
I have like goosebumps.
So that's why I know this shit is legit.
Thank you, Anunnaki. So the Anunnaki, they designed this little like matrix, this little virtual reality game. And I'm not saying that all of the Anunnaki are good. I'm not saying all of them are evil. Remember, it's a different society of energetic beings. So you have good guys, you have bad guys. Just think of it like that. Did some have malicious purposes to do this and to experiment with their DNA? Of course they did. Did some have purposes that were well intended? Like, let's bless these with our knowledge of the all that is, the universe, source, universal intelligence, and wisdom. Let's allow them to have it too. That can be looked at as a positive. However you want to look at it, that's what they did. They created this earth matrix, and the ones who are awakened are brethren in whatever extent that resonates with you, with their fellow awakened ones in the 3D earth plane, as well as connected to the Anunnaki, as well as connected to source, the all-seeing eye, the all that is. So when these ancient civilizations were worshiping the Anunnaki as gods, could it possibly be that the Anunnaki were telling them, listen, this is what we did, and then that wisdom got passed down? But you know, it's sort of like a game of telephone. So if you want to picture, let's go ancient Sumer, how many thousands of years ago was that? They got direct from the source. Anunnaki is like, listen bruh, you're in a little matrix, this is what we did, and now you have some of our DNA, and this is legit. Let's say that went on, but the story that, let's say it got translated from the Sumerians, and then the Sumerians, as the years progressed, word of mouth, like that telephone, you know, the game of telephone, some things are likely to get lost in translation. Especially even with the Sumerian ancient language, it changed, like the cuneiform, it changed a lot over the years. So that's just one example of how even within one civilization over the generations, their language, their written pictographs changed. So you can only imagine the story story that would get misinterpreted, misconstrued, hyped up, dumbed down, whatever over the years, okay? And this goes for all of them as well. It goes for the Akkadians, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. So here's a trippy part. So now I explained the little backstory of that. So now I am going to be bestowing the wisdom that this Anunnaki high priest gave to me, because he was very adamant. He's like, get this out, get this out. Okay, that's what I'm doing. What's up? I see you. You see me? We doing it. So he's letting me know that because the Anunnaki were the ones that created the 3D Earth matrix, they created other creators, because now anyone who is inhabiting the Earth matrix and they have that Anunnaki thing going on within them, now that's part of their energetic lineage, let's say. So now we have the humanoid, and the humanoid, if they are stemmed from source energy, God energy, universe, life force energy, but they reside in physical vessels, that means that source is never separate from them. So everyone is always connected to source. It's just that it was designed, because it is a psychological experiment by the Anunnaki, to see which of the brethren elevate and are able to use their discernment to figure out that it is a 3D matrix, compared to the ones that are just stuck in the 3D matrix. Okay, so if someone is stuck in the 3D matrix, the Anunnaki are basically looking at them like, well, what made this motherfucker decide to elevate and use their own discernment? What caused this motherfucker to just stay in 3D, right? It's a psychological experiment. The closest thing that I can relate it to is the Stanford prison experiment. So this has been popping up a lot in my mind. I don't know why, but basically that is somewhat of a gist of what the point I'm conveying here is. Not necessarily to the extent, if you're familiar with the Stanford prison experiment, it was a psychological experiment, but it was more in terms of like when someone was given power and authority over another, how they would behave, right? That was essentially the gist of it. This is like that, only in an enclosed environment, right? They were, you know, Stanford prison. They were pretending to be prisoners and wardens or whatever the fuck, right? So that's basically what the Anunnaki did with the 3D Earth matrix. They're like, okay, let's toy with these creations and let's put them in this enclosed environment. So all of the Earth matrix, it might seem huge to the average observer, right? The average motherfucker that doesn't know what's going on, but to the Anunnaki, it's literally like a fishbowl. And they're like, oh, look, these fish are doing that, those are doing that. Only it's obviously with the humanoids. So they're conducting these studies and they're observing, and it's all psychology. You might think, why is this really coming up prevalent today, 4,000, 5,000 years ago from when the Anunnaki were here? But you have to remember that they are operating from a different frequency, 11th dimension time. The construct of time is not what it is here. We can have a millennia go on Earth in the earthly matrix, but to the Anunnaki, it might be 1 minute, it might be 1 hour. Right? You have to think that this whole time, 4,000 years or whatnot, they were always observing their science experiments on the third dimensional plane in that fishbowl. So the Stanford prison experiment was sort of like a psychological study, as is the 3D Earth matrix, only it's more broad. It's not just prisoner warden. It's like, are you going to elevate to the next level? Do you realize you're God, or are you going to stay stuck in whatever emotions and thought processes you're going to stay stuck in on the third dimensional plane? So tying it in with my Mars matrix and Earth matrix previous videos, this is how it connects to the Anunnaki key, is that the Earth matrix was designed by the Anunnaki, as is the Mars matrix. So on Earth, we know
in the matrix,
we know of Earth and Mars as sister planets. So you can think of it in some way that there have been beings that were residing in the Mars matrix. It's just another science experiment from the Anunnaki. So this is the best way I can describe it, is sort of like breeding dogs. I know how that fucking sounds, but this is the best example I can give. So we have Earth matrix, we have Mars matrix, both designed by the Anunnaki. So whatever beings were going on in Mars, that's what's going on. What they want to do now, because they're observing the psychological experiments that they were conducting, now they're seeing the ones who are the brethren that are the most advanced on the Earth 3D plane. So a lot of shit going on now, especially with like current events and the mass awakening and all of that jazz. I don't need to get into it. You know what the fuck I'm talking about. But basically now it's the Anunnaki are selecting the desirables, that however they deem them desirable, the ones who perhaps broke free of the earth matrix false bind, or ones who have elevated to other levels of consciousness and things like that. So those would be considered the champions. Okay, so if you want to think of like breeding dogs, we have champion bloodlines. Okay, I used to have a pug.
The best dog ever.
And basically when you go, because I got my dog from a breeder, okay, don't be yelling at me, okay? I went to a breeder because that's what I did. Don't be telling me, oh, you should adopt. Listen, okay, it ain't about that. This is just the easiest way that I can relay it to you fine folks. So I went to a breeder, and if you're looking for a dog, you want to have the best pedigree, you want, well, I'm not saying you want that, but I mean, it's ideal. That's what breeders are basically selling. That's the product that they're showcasing, right? You want the champion bloodline of whatever dog. You want them to be the cream of the crop of their type. I had a pug, and he came with a whole, you know, family tree, lineage, all of that shit. They were saying champion this, champion that, champion, right? So then that's how a breeder becomes reputable, because they're only going to have the creme de la creme, the champion bloodline of the dogs that they are selling. So if you want to think of the Anunnaki as the breeder in broader terms, they're observing the humanoids that they created in the earth matrix. They're like, okay, this is the champion bloodline. For whatever reason, there's a lot to it, you know, a lot of shit that they're looking for. And they're like, okay, these we want to bring over into the Mars matrix to populate the new earth. We're not going to get into Mars right now because this video is going to be 12 hours fucking long. But if I'm guided to make a video specifically on that, another one, then I sure will. So they want only the champion bloodline to populate the new earth. And they actually do show this to motherfuckers in the media and things like that. So the perfect example I have is the movie Knowing, and I think it came out in 2008, 2009, somewhere. It has Nicolas Cage in it, and there's the funniest scene I've ever seen in my life. I was like, what? Like, I couldn't stop laughing every time I've seen that movie. I can't stop laughing. I'm gonna try to insert it here, but I don't know if it's gonna get fucking, you know, copyright bullshit.
Hey! You stay away from us, you hear? Want some of this?
That shit was fucking funny.
Basically, was the movie all that? I don't know. The ending kind of made you think, but the ending only makes you think because, spoiler alert, by the way, the ending, so just skip ahead maybe like 2 minutes in the video if you don't want to hear it, but the ending basically showed this boy and the girl. They were like the two children that were starring in the film, and what happened is that the alien beings brought this boy and this girl to, it looked like another planet or whatever, and they had a rabbit. So rabbit symbolism, boy, girl, yeah, they're gonna grow up to be a man and a woman, and then what are they gonna do with the rabbit symbolism? They're gonna populate, it seems like that was the intention the movie was given, that they were gonna populate the new earth because the old earth was going to shit. Okay, so that's the best example I could give. This is what they're currently doing. Okay, I'm not saying they're behind anything, but they are observing, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna pick this one, he's allowed to graduate to the Mars matrix, or they're going to be the only ones that are going to be able to perhaps have offspring that are going to graduate to the Mars matrix, or their offspring, right? Like, I don't know a time frame, but this is what they're doing now. They're observing, they're selecting, they're saying, oh, this one, champion, boom, they get to go, they get the pass. It's something like that. So that movie Knowing is a perfect example, because you know that things are always conveyed to exactly what they are doing. Another example that I wanted to touch on with this is how things are being conveyed as to what's really going on. These are two other movies, and they're actually documentaries. So one is called Blackfish, and it's in regards to SeaWorld and an orca named Tilikum, and then the other one is called Tyke or something. I don't remember the exact title, but it's in regards to an elephant that was in the circus, and her name was Tyke. So we have Tyke and Tilikum, and they were animals that were basically basically used for entertainment purposes, right? Even though they are sentient beings, the orca and the elephant, what happened is that they were captured, they were taken from their natural habitat, and they were put in an enclosed environment. In Tilikum, the orca's case, it was SeaWorld in an enclosed tank. In Tyke, in the elephant's case, it was the circus. Either which way, they were taken out of their natural habitat, and
they were not having that. They were not.
You could see the way that these documentaries were going, that both of these animals had issues since the very beginning, because they sensed that they ain't supposed to be standing on a fucking ball on whatever the fuck the elephants do and shit, right? They weren't supposed to be doing that. They weren't supposed to have motherfuckers riding them around parading in the circus. They weren't supposed to have motherfuckers riding them around a fucking swimming pool, right? They're like, what the fuck is this shit? So they would act up. They would act up because they, and this is my opinion, they on an instinctual level knew that, like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I'm more than this. That's just another way that was presented to me by this Anunnaki high priest. Like, you know, what examples should I give them? And then that one came into my mind. So with that, you can take the same concept of the humanoid, right? Those in human suits, and those in the human suits are in the 3D matrix, a controlled, contained environment, but the brethren of the discernment realize that they are more than that. Just like the orca, he not supposed to be in a motherfucking swimming pool. Just like the elephant, not supposed to be parading around in a fucking circle and chained up and all of that shit, right? They're more than that. So the brethren would be like Tilikum and like Tyke. They knew that something ain't right with this. I gotta break free, right? So if we want to look at bringing it back to the champion bloodline, Tilikum and oh, they bred him. Oh my goodness gracious. If you ever want to see someone like rubbing one out on a fucking orca, you get that movie Blackfish. I was like,
oh gosh, that poor whale. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, those would be considered the elite, the upper echelon, okay? Because they, and I'm not saying that these two animals were considered that in the documentaries, but I'm just saying that's the best way I can compare it. So they would be considered the upper echelon of the type that the Anunnaki are looking for, because they were like, fuck this shit. Like, we know we not supposed to be fenced in like that. We gonna rebel. If we want to look at it from a psychological experiment point of view, what is going on is the same thing, but only it's rebelling psychologically. Okay, so energetically, the humanoid that is aware that they are in the 3D dimension, living out whatever experience in their avatar vessel, they know that they are more than that, so they're rebelling against the system that they are trapped in. So in not rebelling, like, you know, Tilikum, he killed some people, okay, Tyke, she killed someone, okay, not rebelling in that way, although I guess some might, but it's more of an energetic rebellion. Like the energy is saying, don't fuck with me, but it's energetic, it's not necessarily physical. Okay, so that's what the Anunnaki is looking for, those who know that they are more than the system that encloses them, like the matrix. So that's why these folks that the Anunnaki are observing and looking for in their little fishbowl, they're like, oh, champion bloodline, he don't buy the bullshit, let's move him on up, right? Like, that's what they're doing, they're selecting it.
So I do just want to take a moment to add here, whilst I'm editing, of course, that sometimes, even though a wild animal, like the examples I gave, the orca and the elephant, some of them, though they may have been bred and born in captivity, quote unquote, that will not suppress their natural animal instinct that they have within them. So the Anunnaki, even though they did build the 3D Earth matrix, being that the humanoids have the Anunnaki quote unquote DNA residing within them, it is still not going to suppress their natural instinct that they have the God code within them that they can choose to activate whensoever they desire. So that is why you may ask, well, if Tilikum and Tyke were taken from the wild, of course they would rebel because they once knew the wild, but it is the same thing. This also applies to the offspring of the wild animal, or the offspring, quote unquote, DNA offspring of the Anunnaki, because it is still going to be somewhere in their psyche, in their DNA, in their energy, that they are a free sovereign being. Therefore, they know instinctually that the confines of either a zoo, a circus, SeaWorld, what have you, 3D Earth Matrix, are not going to be able to confine them. This is a sign of the elevated psyche, because they are thinking literally outside of the box that they perhaps were born into.
They're selecting different individuals, the humanoids, and they're saying, okay, you're worthy to progress. It sounds weird saying it like that, saying you're worthy to do this and the other one isn't, but that's just the message that I'm being conveyed. They're looking for the champion bloodline, because the next phase is they want to go into the Mars Matrix. That's why you have a lot of like outer space shit being spoken of now. Whether you believe in outer space or whether you don't, it's being spoken of for a reason, because there's something more out there than just is the confined in the 3D matrix. Moving along into more of what this Anunnaki high priest was conveying to me, how someone is deciphered to be like a champion bloodline, if they're seeing through the eye of the all and all of that, is via the element of fire. Because for whatever reason, in the 3D Earth matrix, here you go. I got a lot of information at once. If you channel, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. So I wrote some shit down. I'm gonna try to explain it in a way where it makes cohesive sense. So here we go. So the 3D Earth matrix, we have the natural elements of water, air, earth, okay? But there are 4 common elements that are known, even in astrology. We could even take it there, even in the tarot, right? Of course, we have the 5th element, ether, and, you know, other worldly elements, but for now we're just going to stick to the earthly plane. So the earthly plane, the 3D matrix that was created by the Anunnaki, they have those 3 elements present. Now, what happened to advance, what was it, the Neanderthal? I don't even know. Eons ago. What was that? 10,000 BC? I don't even know. What was that? Where civilization started taking off after fire was created. Notice, and I am not a fucking scientist, I am not a biologist, so I don't know the science. I'm not here trying to talk about science. I'm just getting the information that was conveyed to me. So the information that was conveyed to me, air, water, earth on the 3D matrix. Fire, just like the caveman discovered fire by rubbing 2 sticks together or whatever the fuck that was. That motherfucker, that first caveman, what did he have to do? He had to think, he had to discern, he had to do something outside of the realm of normalcy to create that fire. So fire is the element on the earthly 3rd dimensional plane that is pure creation. That's why we're going to go back to ancient civilizations, the pyramids, Aztecs, the Mayans, right? They all had what in common? The pyramid. The element of fire is an upward facing pyramid. So what does that suggest? And this is channeled information, okay? I ain't going by no textbook definition. The pyramid represents the element of fire. It's upward pointing, upward to the heaven, right? Upward. You're not bound by the earthly forces of air, of earth, of water. Now you're ejecting yourself into the ethers by that fire element, because much like the caveman, how once fire was discovered, what happened is that civilization started to advance. So if we want to use it as an example, it had to be created. Now, I don't know if fire can be created without the help of man or whatever, but it's basically from this standpoint, the humanoids' utilization of fire. They have to create it for themselves, okay? You have to have different elements abundant and utilized in the correct way in order to create a fire, okay? Whereas the wind just blows, the water just flows, the earth just grows.
Oh snap!
So fire is the essential element of creation, and it is the key to unlocking your full unlimited potential, because fire, now we want to take it into astrology and in tarot, it's pure creation, it's passion. If that caveman was sitting there and not passionate enough to be like, let me try whatever the fuck he was trying, would that have happened? No, he would have just tried it once, it didn't work perhaps, and then he moved along. But when someone has that fire fiery passion to elevate, to create something that did not exist before. That is the key to unlocking the matrix. Now, a lot of you watching this, I'm sure all of you watching this are already, you know what the fuck I'm talking about, but symbolically and metaphorically, the fire is shown with the pyramid because fire propels one upwards into the other dimensions and beyond, and now you're no longer stuck on the third dimensional plane. But to the humanoid, fire is how one escapes. If someone does not have that burning, driven passion to elevate, to ascend, to move forward, to gain more, something that is not necessarily already available to them, like the three other elements, that is true expansion. It comes from the fire. That's why there are pyramids as conveyed to me, because it's a representation of that's what's being conveyed to me. There might be other like earthly reasons why the pyramids are there, but this is straight from the Anunnaki high priest. He's like, those are representations of the fire element. The fire element, the passion, drives you forward to create. It's creation in its purest form. This is why you have in astrology, Aries is the first sign. It is cardinal fire. The key word of Aries is the God code, I am. If you look at the different keywords for the signs, this is symbolic as well, whether you want to look at it astrologically or not, because cardinal fire, you're pushing your drive forward, you're pushing your energy forward with a passion, you're creating something new. I am. And that is how realities are molded in this dimension and beyond, as conveyed to me. You say I am, boom, the act of creation. That is God code. That's what it is. It's that fire, it's that passion. That's how you create. That's how you create things that were not there. Just like the caveman, he done created fire. It wasn't there before. He was using elements that he already had, but he created something new. So that is the drive. So one elevates only if they are very passionate about what the fuck they're doing. That's the key to everything. I am cardinal fire. I am. You say it, you declare it, boom, you start moving shit. You start moving molecules and things like that. Okay, so that is what is being conveyed to me. So when you take that I am into yourself, and Jesus says this, he always says I am. Moses said that when he spoke to God on the mountain, God said I am. This can be found in a lot of historical references on the earthly plane as well. But I am, that passion, that drive, that is how you get what you want. That is how you create new worlds. That is how you walk as a god on earth in the earthly matrix. And the Anunnaki are fucking watching this, okay? They're like, we done gave you the keys, so I mean, all you have to do is put that shit in the ignition, light it up. So when one is passionate, one declares with passion, that fire, they are declaring for the elements, for the sources to create for them, to begin to move energy for them. And that is the command. That is the command to create whatsoever the fuck you wish whilst in the 3D matrix. So another point that he wants me to convey is about brainwashing. So this also has to do with the I am principle and the fire element where you're creating something. So if we want to think of brainwashing, because remember, they're doing a psychological experiment, okay? So if you could think of the Earth 3D matrix, motherfuckers were born into this brainwashed, okay? When their soul started inhabiting the body, they made whatever agreement to be brainwashed and to abide by the rules of the video game, of the 3D. So they essentially are brainwashed with the programming that is designed to dumb them down. So it's like a psychological maze, the 3D matrix. That's what he's telling me. So psychological maze, like you gotta keep moving, you gotta keep like, where's the cheese, where's the cheese, shit like that, right? So you're going around in circles, but you don't give up because you have that drive, that fire, that passion. So when someone is brainwashed, they are essentially taking on information that may or may not be true. That's a detrimental side of brainwashing. But there's also, because I always talk about poles, there's the positive side of brainwashing, is that you are able to actually brainwash yourself utilizing the I am, the fire factor, the act of creation. So you could think of brainwashing as something negative, someone like mind control or trying to program you, whatever the fuck they're doing. But when you brainwash yourself yourself, or if you allowed yourself to be brainwashed from a positive point of view, and I'm thinking hypnosis, okay, that's just kind of where I went. Like if you're hypnotized, you're susceptible, but now they're implanting like a positive belief code in your psyche. Okay, when you brainwash yourself, it's a positive thing. So you are able, you have the ability, this is what he's saying, you have the ability to brainwash yourself, and brainwashing can be quite good for the psyche because you need to clean your fucking brain, right? Like I saw this meme that had like a literal brain like washing itself in the shower. That shit was funny. But anyway, so when you do it yourself, think about it. If you brainwash yourself, if you have that drive, that assertion, that passion, that I am all creation shit going on within you, that's beneficial because now you just you wash your brain, you scrub it of the shit that no longer serves you, and then you introduce whatsoever you want your brain to start reproducing for you via the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So if you don't wash your brain of old belief systems or even like OCD type of nonsense, like minor shit, like checking to see if you have your keys a million times before you leave the house, right? Like you could do it for any aspect, any type of weird habit or anything that you just don't want to deal with anymore. You brainwash your motherfucking self, and you do that through the element of fire. That could be a whole other topic in and of itself, but this is just something that he wants me to convey as well here. So you are able to brainwash yourself, and the key to brainwashing yourself, you want to make sure that your brain, he has a good scrubbing too. Like you scrub your body, you go in the shower, right? Like it's like, imagine you went to the beach, you went to the gym, and then you went to go do yoga all in the same day and you didn't shower. Are you gonna want to fucking lay in your bed at night like that? I mean, I don't think so, without washing your physical body. So it's the same thing with brainwashing. If you don't brainwash yourself, if you don't wash your own brain, scrub it free of any debris that might be there from wherever the fuck it was, what's gonna happen? You know, your psyche, he gonna get a little bit icky, he gonna get a little bit muddled, he not gonna be functioning, being as jiggy as he possibly could if he wasn't washed. So you want to make sure you wash your body, brush your teeth, wash your brain. You gotta keep shit up to par, okay? And that includes your belief systems. So another point, because I told you, mind you, I received all this information in probably like 5 minutes, but to talk about it, it takes a while. Literally, when I received all this, it was not more than 10 minutes. I know that. Even when I went to like record my voice notes, it was really rapid fire. We have a lot to cover, but it was conveyed like immediately. So another point that he wanted to address was, I don't know how to pronounce this, Ptolemy, I believe. And so that came into my mind and I was like, what the fuck? So this Anunnaki high priest basically conveyed to me that Ptolemy is, his teachings are Anunnaki thought processes. So whether he was aware of the Anunnaki or whether he was just tuned into the Anunnaki but didn't know that they were the Anunnaki, I don't know. But this high priest is telling me to convey that this guy Ptolemy, his shit was legit. That might resonate with a few of you, but some key points that I am going to address here, and we're not going to get entirely into that. It might be another video, it might not be, but this video is going to be really long, I know it, so I'm going to try to keep it simple. So Ptolemy, if we want to go by the textbook definition, he made contributions to astronomy and mathematics, geography, musical theory, and optics. It also says that he had a geocentric model of the universe. This is more along the lines of what we're going to be talking about today. And with his geocentric model of the universe, the sun, the moon, and each planet orbit around Earth, which is stationary. So this can be used, you know, if you want to think about it in terms of actual astronomy, okay? I know that this method was actually replaced by the heliocentric philosophy, but Ptolemy, he had the geocentric philosophy that everything moved around the Earth. So this is what the Anunnaki high priest is conveying to me in regards to this. So if we want to think of it in terms of astronomy and then metaphorically for the 3D Earth matrix, the sun, the moon, and the other planets planets do revolve around Earth, because from someone's point of view, whilst residing in the Earth 3D matrix inside their physical vessel, and they are gods creating their own reality, then what happens is that everything else does revolve and move around them. So that's the metaphor that I am being guided to tell you now, is that with the geocentric philosophy, that let's say we want to think of the 3D Earth matrix as stationary as the Anunnaki designed it, but it is showing other things revolving around it in regards to what the player and the AI technology in the 3D Earth matrix is commanding upon it through that I am principle. So if you want to think of the sun as conscious mind, the moon as subconscious mind, and you want to think of the other planets, however you want to look at it, astronomically, astrologically, whatever, I'm using this in the context of a metaphor. The sun and the moon are representative of the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. Sun, male principle; moon, female principle. I have a lot of other videos on that too, but they are revolving around Earth 3D matrix because the mind is creating whatsoever appears in front of the seeker that is standing in a physical vessel on the 3D plane. So that is what I'm being conveyed. Ptolemy, his theory about geocentric Earth, that everything does revolve around the Earth. Essentially, in this context, it does, because the Earth is immobile. It's a 3D matrix. It's stationary, but you are creating other worlds around you. You are tuning into other dimensions around you via the proper utilization of the sun and the moon, your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. So that's what they want me to let you know as well. And now we have some homework, because this is just what I was guided to share with you, okay? I'm
The messenger, you know?
So the homework that the high priest of the Anunnaki would like for you to contemplate are 2 questions. And the answer, there's no right or wrong answer. If you so desire, if not, I mean, just click off the video, catch you next time. But if you so desire to do some inner self-reflection, he asks that you ask yourself these 2 questions. And the 2 questions verbatim are: who is the disciple of discernment? And who is the apostle of the eclipse? I'm not going to say any more, because if it resonates with you, you're going to formulate your own conclusions. But those were the homework questions that I was guided to share with you. So this video was super long. You might wonder why I didn't break it down into different videos, but he wanted me to just convey it all in one, and I'm not going to take away branching off into another topic and take away, you know, the teachings that I was shown today. So there you go. Thank you, universe. Thank you, Anunnaki. Thank you guys for joining me on this long stroll today through some interesting fucking topics. I am Oculus, the alien next door. We will chit chat again soon.